The Talking Points with the Training Center starts now.
Welcome to episode 4 of the Talking Points with the Training Center. I'm Ryan Ozella, and I'll be your host today. I'm joined by owner of Dub Baseball and lead coach Erik Wogley, and owner of ID3 Training and head strength and movement coach at the TC, Dan Kabouley. We also have a special group today with us as we have the Meta crew. With that, we have Adam Farb, president of NCTB, Chris Bodishbaugh, assistant coach at Los Medanos College and OppoTaco, Lance Franks, owner of the Chico Aces, and Dyron Rawling, owner of Admirals Baseball. Today, we're going to be talking about a very exciting new project currently being launched in Northern California, the Meta program. The Meta program is a comprehensive player development system for the elite players in Northern California. The Meta program is being administered by NCTB and is an alliance of the best development programs in Northern California. But before we go deep into the discussion, let's get to know our guests. Adam, why don't you start us off and give us a little background as to who you are?
Sure. So I am the founder and owner and president of NCTB Baseball. We run most of the tournaments in Northern California. I started out as a club ball coach. I formed the first club team in the North Bay, the North Bay Extreme, back in 1999 or 2000. Coached high school baseball at Drake High School for a decade. Marin Catholic before that. Currently the pitching coach at College of Marin in Kentfield.
Thanks, Adam. Chris, why don't we give a little background from you?
Yeah, grew up out here in the East Bay and played baseball and football, and ended up signing with the Marlins out of Chico State in 2007. Played 10 years professionally between independent ball and affiliated baseball and overseas a little bit, and retired in 2016. Prior to that, I was kind of coaching at Los Medanos as an assistant while I was still playing during my off seasons, but I've been full-time there since retiring in 2016, and then started in the youth stuff the same year, 2016, with a group of really good young kids, and kind of saw them through high school, and we've got a couple more teams on the way up right now.
Lance, you're up.
All right. Grew up in Arkansas. Moved here in Chico 2002. Played college baseball at the University of Arkansas. From there, signed with the Cardinals. Spent 5 years in their organization, then played 3 more years independent ball and ended up coaching professionally for 2 years. After that, started the Chico Aces, and here we are.
Short, simple, and sweet. Thanks, Lance. Dyron, why don't you talk us through you?
Right on. Dyron Rowland, president of Admirals Baseball Club. Been at the amateur level now for about 6 years. Played baseball locally, grew up in Northern California. Once I was done playing ball in college, moved on to Southern California, where I coached at OCC for a while, junior college. And then from there, went on to just kind of take on the coaching role, development program. Just recently started a program called Gears, which is technical development for middle infielders, corners, and catchers, and continue to just develop players through the process.
All right, so Adam, why don't you give us a little background as to kind of where this idea for Meta came from, and then we can get into each of the coaches and give us a little background as to kind of why they decided to join this program and what they see with it going forward.
Sure. So I think this came as a direct result of another project that we were a part of starting called the 100, and so to give it the background that it deserves, the 100. The idea behind the 100 was to get the best players, underclassmen players in Northern and Central California together in one place and let them compete with each other, compete in a fun environment, compete be able to stay closer to home and play elite competition. And in going through that, and we started that last summer, had a phenomenal summer with it, with a lot of support from these guys and other programs all around Northern California. But it became clear that there were some things going on in the travel ball world for these kids that none of us were all that excited about. There's a lot of push and pull on them. There's a lot of, demand for kids to be either loyal to a program or, you've ever heard someone, that's my guy, my guy does this, my guy does that. And after about the 50th of those conversations, toward the end of the summer, I think we just started realizing that there was some things where, man, this could be better. I've never wanted to run a club program. Obviously, I run tournaments. It's almost a conflict, right? But I've done it before. I know what it looks like. I know what the issues of it are. And I got like some of the people on this call that do a great job with it. And like, man, can we just all send these guys to them? But in any case, like there's just some low hanging fruit. So not wanting to run it, I got on the phone with people I knew, like these guys on the call and a couple others who aren't on this call, and said like, look, like what if we helped administer it? Like we're good at the administration side. We've got the reach of the players. These guys want to play together. And there's a couple things that are low hanging fruit. Like the schedule should be set in advance. Obviously that's probably not going to work out that way this summer with the coronavirus and all the changes. But going forward, like families should know what their baseball schedule, their travel schedule, their work vacations, et cetera. That's low hanging fruit to me. Roster sizes. Sometimes you'll go to big showcase tournaments, as we all have, and, teams are there with 25, 26, 28 man rosters. And you go like, okay, like we all understand the pitcher only side, but like for a position player, like they just spent 9 days in Arizona and got 2 at bats. Like how was that either developmental or did it help them even on a recruiting side? Like how could it? So having smaller roster sizes, having, an intelligent summer schedule that is communicated out, and kind of then my role becomes in something like this, like how can I help with the administration to let the guys that are out in the trenches already doing this continue to do this at a really high level? How can we bring this to a group of players that really want to play together, that are motivated to be great together, that can form into something, have it be non-exclusive so that they're, free to go play other places where we're not thinking, oh, we own this kid and it's not about that. Take some of the money side out of it, take some of the ego side out of it, and create a structure where players can thrive and players can enjoy being good at what they do in baseball. So that's the origin of it. What it is it's a club team. There's 4 meta teams this summer. There's two freshman teams. There's 2 sophomore teams. The Prime and the Power. Those are all being run by guys who were existing club coaches. So Erik Wagley, president of Dub Dynasty, is coaching the Meta Power. Gary Forrester, the coach at Bella Vista High School, who coached another travel team last year, is taking on the sophomore Meta Prime. Chris is doing the freshman Meta Prime, and Damian from Club All Star, who's not on the call, but been coaching travel ball for as long as I've been in travel ball, which is a long time, as you can see by my beard. Damian's going to coach the other freshman team. So, we're not reinventing the wheel, right? We're just putting really good baseball people on the field with great kids, doing it in an environment that allows them to grow. So the third thing I guess I would talk about is, in doing the schedule, a team like that has an issue. And the issue is, how the heck do they practice, right? Because the kids are coming from everywhere, from Bakersfield to Chico to Aptos. We're covering a wide geographic area with these teams. And so I came up with something that I had taken from my days with USA Baseball and running the NTIS, and that's to do these kind of 2 or 3 day mini camps. And rather than, have a kid from Bakersfield drive up to the Bay Area for a 2 or 3 hour practice, well, that's not a very productive use of their time or a productive use of their family's time. So instead, we come up with, these guys will come in, let's say it's a Saturday, Sunday. They'll come in on Saturday morning. We'll get vans and hotels and all that. Obviously, don't know how that's going to look this summer, but this was the plan. We do 2 a day practice on Saturday, have a nighttime activity, maybe go to a ports game, maybe do some seminar type stuff, assessments, things like that. Get back on the field on Sunday, probably have a practice Sunday morning, maybe an inter squad or a scrimmage or a game on Sunday afternoon, or just another practice, whatever the teams needed to do. And get a chance to have all these coaching resources that we have like on this call, and get them out on the field with kids and get our hands dirty and help these guys achieve their dreams. So that's the gist of the meta system and the meta
Awesome.
program.
Thanks for appreciate that. Thank you so much for the clarity. Chris, why don't you kind of give us a little background as to why you're joining in on this?
Development, flexibility. Those are the 2 biggest things in my eyes. I mean, I knew some of my guys would be involved in it, so that was obviously an initial draw, but the practices, finding a way for, like Adam talked about, for an elite team to practice has always been difficult. Normally, any team that is a really, really, really good team that competes at the national level, their players are spread out. And I think this plan, the only way to really have that done on a consistent basis outside of the mini camps is to have coaches in different regions that can help these guys that are all involved together. So for, say, my Meta Prime team, I mean, there's kids that are from San Jose that'll be working with Erik and Dub. There's kids in the Bay Area that'll be working maybe with me and Dyron. There's kids in the Stockton area that are practicing with JD and Club All-Star, up in Chico with Lance. The kids are spread out as far as their area goes, but the coaches are all in contact together, and that is abnormal. That doesn't happen. I mean, I haven't seen it happen. So for me, that was the draw. It was for having all these guys on the same team, but still developing together in their own separate regions.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really good point you made there. And I think it's a good transition into Lance. Lance, what's your kind of thoughts on this as well?
Well, Adam's involved. So, I mean, I trust Adam with, my kids. And that's one of the big reasons, because Adam, wants to do this. Another thing is I love the mini workouts where these kids can get together for a weekend, 2-3 days, whatever it is, and develop. Because, I mean, with my teams, it's hard. We're lucky to be able to practice here in Chico and in Woodland, where the SAC area kids can come practice there. But, it's just the competition for my kids that are at that level, because I do have a lot of kids that aren't ready for that level. So it really helps those kids that are ready for the level of competition to get into those bigger tournaments.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's something that we didn't really mention earlier, but all these kids still have the opportunity to play for their regular club programs, and that's a good transition for some of them, like you mentioned, to go and play with an elite group to see if their talents can really match up with some of these other kids that are around Northern California. Dyron, why don't you kind of take us over with what you think of with Admirals?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important, right? Just because, like, kind of what Lance is saying, these players that are ready to kind of get past their existing teams, the development process of being around, equal talented players. I think it's an early, adjustment to college. A lot of these kids are the kids that you're probably going to see at the 4-year level, right? So it's a quick transition to college where everybody's a big fish, right? You have multiple coaches, multiple voices, one philosophy, obviously, in development, kind of what Erik's saying, and getting better, but kind of iron sharpening iron, man. Not to be weird about it, but I think that's the best thing, right? Taking those elite players, putting them on one field to challenge themselves. And then, like you said, just kind of rank up, see where you stand with some of the best players in the country, right? And can you really play at that level? You'll know fast, we'll know fast, right? And then just the development piece, right? I mean, not just physically, but I think the growth mentally is huge for those players, right? Because now they've got to overcome challenges that they haven't probably experienced because they've always been the best kid, right? Or always played in a program where the coaching staff, put them, let's be honest, they put them on a pedestal. They expect them to do a lot of things. And in this situation, it allows them to say, hey, you know what? Anybody on this team can do it. Anybody in this program can play. And it kind of raises the bar. It makes you as a player get more out of yourself. And that, to me, is ultimately what I think is the biggest value in this program, is that it's going to make sure that guys can pull everything they got out of themselves and their abilities to kind of know where they stand. So I'm excited.
That's awesome. That's a great point right there. You said about raising everyone together. Erik, why don't you kind of bring us home on this group, and then we'll go into the next question afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they all made, perfect points and agree with everything they said completely. On our end, there was kind of an internal and external struggle with kids in our area. Internally in Dub, just seeing a lot of our higher level players want more and not exactly sure how to give it to them because we just didn't have enough of those kind of players in our particular area. And these are things that I've kind of been discussing with Adam for years is just what, what do I do with these guys that want to train with us, but then also want to play in all these huge tournaments, and, you know, kind of getting to Dyron's point about iron sharpening iron, they want to be around some better players. And so there was just a struggle internally on what exactly to do with them. I mean, you know, obviously we feel that if they're training with us, they're in good hands, but, you know, even when we would go to some of these bigger tournaments with our normal dub teams, knowing that we have a pretty much a limit on how far we can really go with what we had, and some of our boys wanting a little bit more than that. The schedule, I think, is a huge one. Kids get pushed around all over to all these different showcases and events and bouncing around teams. And the concept of meta is that they really don't have to do that anymore. And I know we're going to talk about that in a sec. But then externally, just seeing players outside of our program that are in this area that we care about, kind of getting caught into the trap of going to play for some of the programs that don't value development and don't really care about the player. And they're just kind of in it for themselves and their egos. And you know, being in a small town environment where we're at, it kind of hurts to see some of these kids fall for that, and so many of these families fall for that, and knowing that we can kind of give them something better where they don't have to fall for that was a huge draw.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think the one thing that we all kind of agree on is that development piece is huge. It's a big part for all of us in getting all these players to reach their ceiling. And Erik, like you just mentioned, kind of the summer schedule. So Erik, why don't you kind of kick us off on what that summer schedule looks like, and kind of what major events we're focusing on and showcases the kids are going to be getting into?
Yeah. You know, we have some awesome events we're in. We're going to start out, if the schedule holds. This could all get blown up in the next few weeks, but if the schedule holds, we're going to start with some mini camps and trying to get the boys in one spot and go through some assessments. And like Adam said, just really run them through the ringer. That'll probably be more valuable now than ever, just because they've lost out on so many reps without the high school season. And then just all 4 teams are doing some slightly different national events. But, you know, a lot of the teams are doing the USA Baseball Championships, the Perfect Game stuff out in Florida, PBR stuff down south in Orange County. So it just kind of depends on the team. But and those events were scheduled around Super Camp, area code tryouts, and some of the other larger national events that these players are going to want to go to individually. So these players don't have to worry about bouncing around and kind of not being on a plan anymore. They're going to have a real set plan for the summer.
If I can jump in. So the core of the model, rather than being based on like which national tournament, because to a certain extent, like it doesn't matter. Like you want to go somewhere that's going to challenge you, that's going to be appropriate for your team, that's going to be tough competition. But we basically chose 2 big events per team. So each team's schedule, the way it works is they have 2 big events, they have 2 local events, and they have 2 mini camps. And that's it. We got 6 events for the meta teams for the summer. Everything else is left free and open. And it's left free and open so that they can play with their high school team, perhaps. They can do football training. They can play with their other, you know, with their club team, play with the Admirals or the Aces or OppoTaco or Dub, whatever the case may be. Basically, that they can make their own choices about what they want to do. If they want to go to college camps or go to other showcases, so be it. Like that's their right, and that's fine. We don't have any claim on them. We wanted to keep our schedule limited and focused on things that were really going to be impactful for those guys. So in doing that, we all 4 teams are playing in the USA Championships, and then each team has another, you know, national or semi-national event that they're going to conclude the summer. The freshman, Chris's team is scheduled to go to Florida to the Perfect Game World Series. The sophomore prime team is going to the Perfect Game World Wood Bat. Erik's team is going to the Old Singer Summer Series. And there's a PBR event for the freshman power team down in Southern California. And all of those were, you know, talked about and just kind of chosen as the right event for that team, both schedule-wise and competition-wise.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. So as we kind of, you know, you kind of nailed that on the head right there as to kind of what that schedule is going to look like for all of our guys. Let's talk about kind of the training setup and how everyone's kind of utilizing not only the ability of each program to kind of interact with that, but also these big group sessions that we're talking about. And Dan and Erik, why don't you guys start off in kind of what we've been doing with our assessments and what we've been utilizing with track to kind of help build this all out?
Well, track's going to provide kind of exactly what we need between all these players spread out all over the place. It's an online training portal powered by Driveline, and we're able to kind of program each athlete full workout in there. So we added them all last week and kind of have given them some stuff to do in this, in the shelter in place. So that's going to kind of be the hub of their training side of things. And we can add coaches onto that. Any of these guys can get an account and be able to program their team on track. So it's a pretty cool tool. And that's something Adam and I had discussed as maybe being the hub of the summer, and having all the meta players on that. We had them in our building in late January, kind of right before the high school season started, and got a little bit of a head start with Dan and ID3 on building out some physical assessments for them and kind of showing them what that process looks like. So Dan can maybe talk about what he did with them.
Yeah, trying to meet the needs of the individual and figure out what is that low-hanging fruit we've talked about a couple times. But when it comes to truly developing the player, yes, we need to develop them physically. We need to develop them from a skill standpoint, and we need to develop them from a mental standpoint. So we're trying to do all of those. But I believe what I bring to the table is that the focus on the physical side of things. So understanding their body, their range of motion, their strengths, their weaknesses. And then the big thing between Erik and I and Ryan is trying to connect the different metrics that we can test with the training methods that we can implement and give them through track, and then use those numbers to figure out, okay, are we actually making players better? Are they actually developing? And using those numbers as our evaluator and our barometer versus using gameplay. Gameplay is important. You need to go out and you need to be a good baseball player. But if we can show, hey, this training program helped improve your eggs velocity, throwing velocity, running speed, whatever it is, whatever number you truly care about, and coaches will use as an evaluation tool. That's kind of the goal of bringing training to this training development with Meta.
Awesome. Hey, Dyron, why don't you kind of bring in a little bit of what you're thinking on with this training setup and how you're going to see your guys kind of interact with it?
I think for me, I think it's going to be important just from, like you're saying, just a development standpoint, right? From the analytics standpoint, seeing where they stand, where they can grow, where they can develop, areas that they need to improve on, they can work on, which will help structure training sessions, future sessions, things like that. So I think it's an important tool from that standpoint. And I think that the measurables are going to be, they're going to tell the story, right? So I think that's where it fits best for me, for players, that I've kind of pinpointed to playing the Meta program. It's just a numbers game, right? And figuring out how to get those numbers, as high as possible, reach those ceilings and get better. Obviously getting development is huge for me. That's all I care about. 100%, right? And that's from the youngest age all the way up. This is a prime age to start to implement some of these things, right? As I talk to, coaches around the country, they're using that same platform, that same software. So it makes sense to engage and get them involved with it early, right? Get them familiar with it, right? So, I'm excited about it.
Awesome. Lance, what's your thoughts on this, the training setup and the way you're going to utilize it with your players?
Lance might have stepped out for a second, so I'll pick up a little slack there.
Sorry,
but I think another cool part about this and all of us working together and really kind of checking our egos is with this training is, let's say we have an arm that we're training in the training center, but he's on Chris's team. Chris can easily say, hey, Erik, like this kid's velo's down, and then we can kind of look at our training protocols in house and be like, okay, let's address that, and like Chris said earlier, that's not normal in the club ball world. And so that's going to be kind of a cool setup, and we'll all be able to help each other on the training side of things, be able to address the needs of all these athletes.
Yeah, and I think that's the point that we're all, I think, really excited about with this is being able to see from different points of view, but also have a big picture of what these players are and where they can go. To kind of go with that same process, let's go over the recruiting process. Obviously, we have a talented group in these 4 teams. So the recruiting process is going to be obviously a key area for these kids is to try and utilize this to improve their views and get more colleges looking at them. Adam, why don't you kind of kick us off as to what the recruiting process looks like and how valuable it's going to be to have all of these coaches working for the players all together?
Sure. I mean, I think that for the most talented players, finding access to college coaches is not their challenge. They're invited to every event under the sun. They are highly sought after. It almost doesn't matter who the go-between is. The biggest benefit for them in the recruiting process, number one, is that they're all together. So it's fish in a barrel for a college coach. Number two is the guidance and help and support without an agenda from all of us, right? None of us are going to profit or, you know, build our reputations on what school your kid goes to. We're just here to help you find the right fit, right? We've all been through it. We've all placed plenty of guys in plenty of places. Like, we don't need to fight those battles anymore. And that's the battle that seems fought daily on Twitter. So for a player coming in, they're going to be seen because, first of all, no matter what anybody says, you're in Northern California playing with elite players, and it's going to be covered. And guys are going to hear about you. They're going to see you. The realistic expectation is basically that every school on the West Coast is going to see these guys play over the course of the summer. Now, they may not see them a lot. They may only see them once or twice, but they're going to see them play. The network that we can all bring, that we've been reliable and guys can trust us. We've sent them guys before. Dyron has, Lance has, I have, Chris has, you know, Erik has. Like, we all know, and we all know how to tell people the truth. So when they call to cross-check a kid, you know, I think that we can be taken seriously on that, despite the fact that it's a, quote, new team. None of us are new to the scene. We all have tons of players playing at Division I programs, probably for the coach that's calling us, and have built a reputation and built a legacy of trust that can be drawn on. So I'm not sure exactly whether that answered the question, but that's what popped into my head.
That's awesome. Yeah, it definitely gives us a great view of this as a full circle program where everyone's getting the view from everyone else and the help from everyone else. Lance, you know, that kind of goes to what you're talking about. You grew up, like you said, you were in Arkansas. Having obviously some of those connections and being able to utilize that with this program, what do you kind of see with the recruiting process for everybody?
Well, I mean, the meta is going to be great for the recruiting process. What was the question again, Ryan?
It was just more along the lines of how you kind of feel like the recruiting process is going to improve this for everyone in this meta program, having the access to everybody.
Well, I just, you know, it's kind of like my 17-year-old team that I have right now, probably the best team I've had, where, you know, you put a good product on the field, college coaches are going to come. So, you know, with these meta teams, the college coaches are going to come. I mean, they know they're some of the better players, best players in Northern California. So, yeah.
Awesome. Chris, anything else you want to add to this recruiting process?
Teamwork. The teamwork involved in it is huge. You know, one person working for you, and I'm a true believer that you can't sell a player to a large program. Those players are going to be evaluated based off of, you know, them coming out and watching, but, you know, informing a player about, you know, maybe somebody who's slightly under the radar, and then also having a bunch of voices that are echoing the same opinions on that player because everybody's working together is really big. Obviously, players playing on the same team that are really good are going to draw attention and draw eyes at some of the bigger events. But I think the help and guidance is probably the biggest part. You know, there's a lot of, obviously all of these kids want to play Division I baseball. That doesn't mean that in 4 years that's going to be the fit for all of them. And I think there's a lot of people in this program that understand that Division I isn't the end all be all. It's about the right place, the right fit academically, the right fit from a living standpoint. And I think the more, there's so many colleges from being at AC, how much money is actually out there in the college baseball world between Division II and NAIA and all those different avenues. So at the end of the day, when we just involve Division I, yeah, we probably all know coaches in that level, but when you take all of us and you talk about the Division II, Division III, NAIA schools, that opens up a lot more avenues for these guys and possibly better fit than any Division I school might be at the end of the day. Obviously, we want to get them to the point where they're all Division I players. That's hard, and who knows what happens over the next 4 years. I hope that does happen. That's our goal ultimately, but if that's not the right fit for that guy, we're all going to know that, and I think that we're going to have the trust of the players and the parents and the guidance to send them to the right school.
That's great. Yeah, I think that last part you mentioned about guidance is really huge for all of us. Dyron, you want to bring anything in to close us out on this?
Yeah, man, definitely. I think one thing we touch on, but we don't touch on enough, is the academic piece, right? I mean, that's a big piece for this, and that's big for us, right? So, you know, I noticed the conversations that I have had in the past with, D1 schools, NAI schools, is the first conversation is about the grades, right? What's the academics, right? So I think if we can take this program and kind of cater it to a little conversation about that, especially when you get these incoming freshmen that have a chance, right, to kind of get on the right track if they don't, because they've been playing baseball, been very good at it, maybe carrying a 2.0, 2.5, but talk to them about, hey, man, the money's in academics, right? And so if you can really focus on getting the GPA up and making sure you're getting your A through Gs and making sure you have the academic requirements, the conversation, not just for you and your family, but also the conversations for us as coaches when we do talk to these four-year schools, it's very easy. It's a very easy conversation. If you could play, the money's there academically. There's other avenues that they can go get additional resources for. It just totally makes sense to talk about that, make sure that's part of this program, because that's a separator. That is a differentiator at the end of the day. How smart are you? And that's both in the classroom and on the field. So I think that's a big part of the recruiting process that I look forward to bringing some expertise to and some value there. So for me, I think that's huge.
I think if you look at all the programs and people involved in Meta, the amount of reach we're going to have for four-year contacts is going to be pretty immense. We all have our own little networks. A lot of them overlap, of course, but if we have a little middle infielder that we're trying to place, and like you said, maybe it's a below the radar guy, we can all work together to get that kid to the right spot. And so you don't have just one person or a couple guys networks working together. You're going to have many large networks working together to kind of make sure that all these kids end up where they're supposed to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a huge point as well. And that kind of goes with what Dyron was saying with those grades, is that also opens up a huge area for us if we got kids that are, smart enough to get into bigger schools. So, some of those Ivy League schools or things like that, that even makes the reach even broader and wider.
Put a bow on this. So we kind of came up with an analogy going back when we were putting this together to help explain the teams. And I think it'll help explain kind of the coaching side and the recruiting side a little bit too. And the analogy is, think of these teams kind of like the Avengers. If you look at the logo behind me, right, it's got some Avengers-ish stuff in it, in the sense that like everyone's a superhero, everyone's a great player on the teams, but they all have different skill sets that they bring to it. That's kind of how I view our group of coaches too. Like we're dealing with some of the stars of the Northern California travel ball scene, right? Like the guys who have had their heart in the right place, who have been in the trenches, who have been doing the work and running into different obstacles on their own side because they were all isolated. And now, by bringing it together, we're able to kind of hone and focus those resources and use them in the way we all kind of want, which is for the benefit of players, for the benefit of those guys getting where they want to go in the way they want to go there. So on the recruiting side, all of it comes together. You've got the skill players around you, the competition that you're playing, the college coaches are going to be there. You've got coaches helping you understand that process, helping you, navigate that process in a way that isn't scary to you and doesn't, come out of pocket all the time to go to this event and chase that and do this. And then on the back end, you've got coaches that those colleges trust, not just one of us, but multiple coaches that they trust. They can go, hey, Adam's telling me this kid's the real deal. What do you really think? And those guys are going to give their honest opinion. They go, yeah, he's the real deal. And all of a sudden, I think there's a validation and there's almost a strength in numbers for guys like us that none of us maybe had individually. We all had reputations. We all had things we did well. But by coming together, we're able to kind of focus our powers and focus our talents and really do something that's good for kids.
Yeah, that's a great point right there. And I think that kind of goes just perfectly into this last question, which is, we've obviously been hit really hard with this whole coronavirus and how it's impacting not only just the game of baseball in general, but all of us, our programs and our kids. And, one of those ones where I remember seeing Dyron this last week talk about the mental health of these kids and how it's important for them all to have to learn to get through this and fight through this. And, we joke about the idea like, oh, we have to keep grinding, but for some of these kids, this is scary. This is scary because it's new. Our sense of normalcy has been taken away. So how do we kind of move forward in these next steps and maybe make some adjustments as we kind of go forward with Meta to find the most positivity for this and for everyone here? I'm going to kind of open this one up. Anyone can want to take this over.
I'll jump in. I mean, I think it's important. I think what we're doing right now is just starting that process, right? I mean, the podcast or, whether it's Zoom, it's just kind of the wave of the future, man. Like from technology is going to be a huge piece of coaching. And I think with, all these guys on this call, by doing these touch base with your teams and, keeping them at least connected mentally, whether it's virtual, but at the same time, it's still mental. I think that's huge, right? Working on the game, maybe during the process, hosting, some webinars or some Q&As about baseball, right? Teaching the IQ, the analytical side of the game. This is where now they're so, connected to social media, direct them in the right directions about the game, the right websites about the game that's got the positive feedback, the right approach to the game so that they can develop that other tool, which is the IQ part of the game, right? Because it lacks it. I see it often in players, whether they come to us or even in Finland, they don't even watch the game anymore. They just go out and play it. And they have coaches like ourselves that train them, and they're very good. But in the situational side of things, they don't really know how to play the game from a situational standpoint. When they get to the 4-year, Adams level 2-year, or even Power 5 schools, they're trying to teach these guys how to play a game with all these tools. I think now is the most important time for us as coaches and trainers and mentors to kind of help them with the mental development from that, and then utilizing that to kind of give them some sense of normalcy. Because we don't know. None of us on this call knows what's going to happen when they finally get us out of this shelter in place. But, hopefully we can all start to kind of band together like I see now to help develop the culture and the climate and the community of baseball in Northern California. So I think it's huge just to get online with you guys and talk to them and let them know, hey, it's going to be all right. Like Adam said earlier, we love you. Everything's good. Let's get after it and watch some baseball and let's talk some strategy and situational stuff. That's what I've been doing. So I think it might help.
Yeah, I think it'll help a lot. Sorry to jump in there, but yeah, I think it'll help a lot. And honestly, I think a lot of people are going to try to find a way to survive during this, but we're going to find a way to thrive. Mm-hmm. And I think it's already started. I mean, Adam 2 weeks ago started us, doing meta calls, doing Zoom calls with all the players and getting to know our players. Cause some of us don't know these guys as individuals. On my team, I knew 5 or 6, 7 kids at a personal level. For me to effectively do my job, I have to know every single kid on a personal level. And it's easy to build right now. I don't need to be in person to build that personal relationship with them. That's something that I'm going to start doing this week, one-on-one Zoom calls with each player and building that personal relationship, finding out what makes them tick so that when we do get back on the field, I have a head start, because that's a process. I mean, that's something that we all know as coaches really takes time to figure a kid out and understand how to get through to him and coach him the right way, because we can't coach every kid the same way. It doesn't work. So that's something that I think we started as a group with our original coaches meeting, and Adam put into place with the individual and team meetings. And I think he's continuing to put into place with all the calls with the professional players. And I know he's probably going to talk about some classes that he's going to start as far as the mental side of it as well, and helping all these guys. But the coronavirus, I think we're going to find a way to thrive during this time, and our players are going to be better for it because it's a group effort.
Mm-hmm.
So if I may, great cultures in any endeavor, great cultures are built on love. Great coaches are grounded in love for the game, love for their players, concern about them going forward rather than ourselves. And so if you get to this moment, and look, we're all feeling it, right? We're all stuck at home, and we're all feeling the strain of this. Imagine that for a 15-year-old kid. And you kind of just have to take the perspective that, hey, like, this sucks for me, but I'm strong enough to get through it. And if I'm strong enough to get through it, then isn't it on me to kind of help these guys who are, some of them are doing fine and some of them are struggling right now. Mm-hmm. Like at a minimum frustrated, and in some cases worse than that. I think it's more than just, oh, how do we build our baseball program? I think there's if you actually care about somebody and you actually care about them as a person, you better be there for them when times are hard. And times are hard right now. We have no idea what this is going to mean for our summer schedule. I have no idea what this is going to mean for my business. All of us probably are in the same boat to some extent. And there's nothing we're going to do on this call that's going to change that, right? It's a virus. It's not something we can discuss away. I think the point of all that isn't necessarily what are we doing, but why are we doing it? And the more we can stay grounded in that, the more effective the program's going to be, and the more effective. Anyway.
I think something else that's going to be advantageous to us, and we don't know what this looks like, but let's say some of the bigger events start getting canceled, and we're all suddenly having to find some stuff to do, because of the talent that we have in our program, plus all the resources that we can bring together quickly because of the people that are involved on the coaching and admin side of things. We're going to be able to adjust very quickly to the landscape. And if these big events get canceled, that means there's going to be a lot of college coaches looking for somewhere to go see some good players, because normally they would be at those events. And we'll be able to pull our resources together and mobilize to really make sure that, the kids playing in our program still get exactly what they need this summer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you nailed that one right in the head there to end it, Eric. That's kind of the last question that I had for anybody. Is there anything else that you guys want to bring up before we finish up this podcast for everybody?
The last thing that I would kind of have, I think from everything that we discussed here, and this was, I know, a draw for a lot of players, is especially now with all this coronavirus stuff, is you would think with everything that we're talking about and the amount of people involved, that from a price standpoint, this thing would be through the roof. But there's so many people in this group that are willing to give their time and not make a buck off of it. That I think is truly the only way that this works. I know for me, from a training standpoint, one of the things that we were going to do during the summer prior to this is anybody could come out to LMC and practice any day of the week. There's not extra charges for that. For all the assessments and stuff like that Erik did in January, all that stuff was built in, and it's just people willing to give time. And I think that's the only way that this amount of people could come together and make it financially possible for players, for all players, not just ones that may have a couple extra bucks, but for all players. Donation of time and giving of time and flexibility is the only way that something like this could work. And that's something that I know a lot of the players appreciate. And I know myself as a coach for the guys that I had prior to this Meta program, and all the players really, really appreciate.
And that idea of ego being pushed aside and putting the kids in front of all of us, which is what, one of the things I was enjoying about when I was joining the Dub program was knowing that this program was around, because, my last few years I've been covering the state of northern portion of California and seeing all of your guys' programs succeed with kids. So it was good to see that this group of people were coming together to, like we said, mention and put their egos away, put the kids in front of it, and put the focus on developing them and letting them get to the highest peak that they possibly can. So that brings us to the end of the podcast. I really want to appreciate and thank everyone that came in today. Dyron, Lance, Chris, Adam, Erik, Dan, everybody, appreciate you guys all joining us. And we'll stay tuned, and we'll have you guys on, I guess, another time here soon.
Cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at DubBaseball, at ID3Training, and at Ozella Baseball. Thanks for joining us on the Talking Points podcast. Until next time, keep developing.